The Royal Blue Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Royal Blue Podcast. I'm your host Ian Croll. It's Tuesday and joining me on today's show to talk all things Everton, we have Reach PLC's Business of Football writer, Dave Powell. Dave, how are things? All good?
Yeah, really good. Interesting start to the week. Positive one, I feel. But yeah, it was rumblings of it wasn't the back end of last week, but I think it's come as a surprise to everyone how quickly it's happened. So, but we like to be busy.
Yeah, not half. It was. I think the news broke. Well, that it was close yesterday morning, and by the afternoon, it was statements and everything had been agreed. So yeah, definitely a lot quicker than we thought. For those watching on YouTube, you'll see that we're not in our usual location of the Royal Blue Studio. We are remote, but it was the only way we'd be able to bring you this podcast today. And we did feel it was important to take an in-depth look at the news that broke yesterday, obviously, that the Friedkin Group had agreed a deal to buy Everton Football Club. So that is the agenda then. Before we get going, please give this video a like and drop us a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. We're not live today, but I am pre-prepared. I put a shout out for some questions on Twitter this morning. You have delivered, so I'll put some of those questions to Dave throughout the show. Some interesting points to get through, Dave, I think. We spoke a few months back, if you remember, Dave, I think it was about 2 months back, and when things spiraled with regards to the Friedkin takeover, time has obviously now passed. You've written an article this morning, which is on the Liverpool Echo website, so I would encourage everyone to go and give that a read. But what's your just initial reaction, really, to the takeover news that, as we just mentioned, developed very quickly yesterday?
One of positivity, really. There's been so many false stories, hasn't there, over the past, it's more than 12 months now. I mean, it was 12 months last week since 777 agreed to a deal with Moshiri to purchase the club. Fast forward a year, we've had, that fell by the wayside. And then the Friedkins came in. We're unhappy with some of the debt which existed on the balance sheet from the working capital which 777 had provided during that kind of quite ridiculous 9-month period. Then John Textor was interested recently, very publicly interested. And now the Friedkins have come back to the table. But I think of all the interested parties and those who've been at the table talking with Moshiri, I think they are the ones which offer the most operational expertise and the ability to deliverability, I suppose, the ability to come in and actually make a change. And the fact, I think, that they haven't been so vocal. I think the John Textor situation about him being so vocal in recent weeks probably rubbed up, from some people I've spoken to, Moshiri's camp didn't seem to go down too well. I mean, I think people like to do their business in a more in a quieter manner. The Friedkins have been that. I mean, they make statements when they need to make statements. So I think that might be instructive as to what kind of owners they'll be. But I think it's a positive. When it's not there yet, they got some hoops to jump through. But I don't think that they'll have anywhere near the tower problems which 777 did in trying to gain approval from the Premier League, the FA, and the Financial Conduct Authority.
Cool, right. I've got a whole list of questions, Dave, which I'm hoping you're going to be able to explain in layman's terms, certainly for me and some of the audience that is, the Royal Blue audience. What has changed then in terms of, the Friedkin Group are here 2 months ago. There was a lot of rumours going around as to why they pulled out. Was it a negotiation ploy? And then it came out that they were, a little bit concerned with regards to the 777/ACAP loan, which I think was in the region of around 200 million. I mean, I think we even spoke about the potential for criminal proceedings with regards to the Leadenhall case. Obviously, that's going a very deep dive into things, but there was obviously concerns from Friedkin's point of view, which is why he pulled out. But now he's back.
Well, they've ever since they first came on the scene a few months back, they have been in constant dialogue with the club, with Moshiri, and with other creditors, because they took on the MSP Sports Capital debt, which had to be repaid at the end of May. So they took that on, and so anyone who would have purchased the club, whether it be John Textor or someone else, would have had to settle the Friedkin Group loan, which they took on from MSP at points of sale. Now, in continued dialogue, obviously, there's been other people come to the table to talk. I mean, John Textor, etc. But during that whole period, they've remained. They've sought legal counsel, and they've had time to get their head around and have dialogue with ACAP. So ACAP have been the primary lenders to 777 for 3 or 4 years. And it's largely their funds which have been providing 777 with the ability to spend money on football assets and other things in recent years. So the Leadenhall case is one where 777, the defendant, Leadenhall Capital Partners, the plaintiff, and it centres around accusations of fraudulent behaviour relating to putting up collateral to gain access to $350 million worth of financing when they didn't. Either the collateral didn't exist, or it wasn't owned by Josh Wanda or Stephen Pascoe, who were the co-founders of 777. So that just lays out where it is. But now ACAP have taken on, kind of reclaim some of the debt, the funds they provided. So the Friedkin Group have been negotiating with ACAP, and from what I was told yesterday by Friedkin Group reps, and I was speaking to a couple of sports industry experts in the sports legal profession, it's centred around an agreement's been reached around a payment structure and a level of security that they feel that they wouldn't go into too much detail about it, but a level of security which the Friedkin Group now feel they have to head off any potential ramifications further on down the line if this becomes a criminal case. So that has to go before the civil court, which is hearing the Leadenhall case. That'll go fairly soon, I imagine, the next couple of weeks. It's expected to pass as a resolution. And it doesn't completely remove any risk for the Friedkin Group, but it's given them an additional layer of security which they feel allows them to pursue this. So as part of that, I believe that the Friedkin Group will pay off some of the $200 million loan, not all of it. And now it's a very high interest bearing loan as well. So that's important to remember. So ACAP still have a duty for their investors to deliver and get and recoup as much money as they can from these distressed 777 assets. So having a high interest loan on the balance sheet was preferable. So the Friedkin Group are going to pay down some of this now. There's going to be payment in kind notes apparently for the remainder of it, which is basically what allows for interest to be paid on additional debt as opposed to using cash. So there's a lot of moving parts to it. The main crux of it all being that the Friedkin Group were concerned about potentially what happens in the eventuality it becomes a criminal proceeding, and you get into the whole layer of legality around proceeds of crime, given the fact that they've been accused of fraud, 777. But also the fact that if any insolvency practitioners come knocking, they wanted to be sure that they couldn't come and try and take a slice of Everton to try and recoup assets. So I think now they feel they're in a position whereby they're confident that they are protected enough to proceed with the risk, which they weren't willing to do initially. But they've had the time to do that while a lot of talking's been going on in the public domain from John Textor, etc. I think they've been working probably diligently with this in mind to potentially happen if a deal. They knew John Textor couldn't complete it, quickly because he had a 45% shareholding in Crystal Palace, so he had to divest that before he could do anything with Everton. But they knew they had time on their side, and I think they've played their hand quite well.
So is it fair to say the risk is potentially still there, and they've just got this agreement with ACAP rather than anything that's happened within this civil case?
Yeah, so it's an agreement with ACAP about restructuring this debt they have with them. I think, like I said, they plan to pay off some of it, and it's a high interest bearing loan as well. I think from what I was told, it's between 15 and 20%, and that's high. That's this agreement with ACAP, which they expect, from what I'm told by those close to the Friedkin Group, they expect to be given the thumbs up by the civil court. I mean, this is a civil case, not a criminal one in New York. It must be stressed at the moment. So they expect that to be okayed, and for Everton to, the Everton deal to be able to press ahead without too much risk. There will be some element of risk that exists on this, because if this does proceed to a criminal case, then it's hard to cover yourself for every single eventuality. But I think in doing what they've done, they are comfortable with it. So that's ultimately, and they're not 777. Is kind of what I'm trying to say, I suppose. They are legitimate owners with a strong portfolio who have strong business acumen, and for them to be comfortable with this, I think it should be instructive as to where this will probably play out. I think it will be fine.
What about other loans then? We've had questions with regards to that. I mean, obviously the club said to be in debt of hundreds of millions of pounds. Is Friedkin expected to pay that off right away? We've had one question from for you on Twitter, Softlad Paul. It says, can we clear up the RMF scenario?
The Rights and Media Funding Limited were what was the stumbling block in terms of the MSP minority stake that they were seeking early part of 2023. So that they provided significant funds to Everton in recent years. Now, the Friedkin Group aren't going to come in immediately, I think, and clear all that debt away. I think now it probably stands at more than 300 million, that debt to RMF. But paying down debt and some high interest debt will be an ongoing process for the Friedkin Group, I think, because that level of borrowing and the interest payments that come with it have kind of hamstrung Everton's ability to invest and be competitive. So they've managed, just by hook or by crook, they've managed to get this stadium built throughout all this chaos, and that will be what ultimately helps them turn around the tanker. But there's, over the course of since the Friedkins acquired Roma, they've spent around about £1 billion, I think, in terms of investment. Now, Everton can't just go out and spend money in the transfer market because of the regulations that are in place. The best way for the Friedkins to invest and aid their ability to spend in the future is to address the balance sheet as and when they can by paying down some debt. And they may well turn their 200 million debt that they currently hold on the club into equity. That's something which will, I'm not say likely happen, but it seems like a rational play for them to do. I think that they will start to tackle that debt issue, but that takes time because there's so many players involved and it's so layered. But they did their due diligence early on in the process because they had that period of exclusivity. Now they've had more time actually to become comfortable with the Everton situation. So while all this has been playing out, we removed our focus from the Friedkin Group. They've continued to gain a deeper understanding of Everton and its machinations and the way it works and who the debt lies, who holds the debt and where it all, where the pieces all fall. So I think they'll be more comfortable now than at any point during this whole process. But yeah, that will take time. They're not just going to come in, write checks to people and clear all the debt. But I think over time they'll want to reduce that debt burden because it's been, or at least rather than pay it down, they may, I think, restructuring will be on the horizon because you think about some of the debts that the club has. It was struck during periods when interest rates have been higher. Now interest rates are they're set to continue to fall moving into 2025. So as that happens, I think they may well go back to the market and try and refinance some of this debt for lower interest payments and reduce some of that debt burden. I think that's probably the way it will go. They'll go to market again to refinance some of this debt when the interest rates fall.
And you mentioned equity there. Reports suggesting, there's going to be 400 to 500 million pound worth of equity ploughed into the club. I mean, how's that going to work? Is that figure including in the loan as well that they've already given Everton?
Potentially. It's difficult to value Everton as a football club. I mean, it's they are, even despite all the tumult that's gone on over the past 2-3 years, they remain more valuable than many of the other teams outside the so-called, Big Six. But yeah, I imagine, I mean, they'll put a cash injection in, and I imagine they'll turn that debt into equity, and then the rest will come by way of additional capital. There is continued need to find the remaining tranche of funding for the stadium, which isn't a huge. Well, is a huge amount to you and I, but I think in terms of what's gone before, it's not as big as it was. So I mean, they may well take on that burden as well to complete the stadium build and cash flow the business to a greater extent to remove some of the because Everton have been kind of flying by the seat of the pants quite often in more recent times. I mean, hence the reason why they had to rely on cash flow capital, working capital from 777 to bumble their way through this process. So yeah, I think it'll just be about strengthening the balance sheet, and I think a lot of that will come from the equity they put into the football club. And I would be surprised if they didn't turn that loan to the football club into equity as part of that.
Okay. Dave Jones on Twitter has said, or asked, are we essentially at the stage of contracts exchanged? I.e., as long as the Premier League give approval, is this a done deal, or could the Friedkin Group still pull out?
Yeah, heads of terms have been agreed. I mean, it's that's the process now. I mean, the deal has been agreed. They can pull out. It's hard to know unless there's, it's hard to know the kind of what kind of deal they've got in place because I've no sides of it. But heads of terms, believe have been agreed, and the next stage is the willingness is on both sides now to get this done. Moshiri wants to go. The Friedkins think they've got this for a good deal because Moshiri's accepting far less. I understand than what he had been willing to accept previously. So they've already laid out the land with Roma by putting out a statement. They've already expressed their what's the kind of the plan broadly for Everton moving forward. This approval process won't take anywhere near as long as what some people might be thinking because of what happened with 777. I expect before Christmas, the Friedkin Group will be the new owners of Everton. The only thing I can see which impacts that is if something way out of left field happens with the Leadenhall case, which spooks me. But I think they've sought legal counsel for a couple of months now over a bit to be comfortable with that. So I don't think that will happen. Nor is there any appetite for Moshiri to go back and try and renegotiate with anyone else or start this process again. I mean, he wants to go. He has no interest in finding any more funding. Well, his best option is to leave with this deal. And I think the Friedkins have the leverage. So while they have the leverage, I think they'll be more than happy to press ahead. And they have the readies, so they won't have a problem, I don't think, in passing any of the relevant tests. And I imagine by Christmas, I expect them to be the new Everton owners.
Steve Jones has asked, when will the court ratify the deal? Is that something that needs to be done? Do the courts need to ratify any deal?
No, it's the agreement between ACAP and the Friedkin Group. You're in relevance to me.
Yeah, he says, so the full question is, can you ask how Friedkin structured the deal with partial payment, and when will the court ratify the deal?
And that's expected to happen soon. It's not it's part of that Leadenhall case. Now the wheels of justice turn slowly in America, so nothing is ever quick, but that is expected to be fairly swift. From my understanding, from what I was told yesterday, it's not supposed to be something which they, from legal counsel, they expect any hiccups from or to drag on too long. And now the process it's supposed to take 12 weeks, a process of owners and directors tests. The answer from the ACAP and Friedkin Group agreement is supposed to come far sooner than that. So, I think in terms of a timeline, I don't think it impacts too much.
And just a quick word on Farhad Moshiri then. I've seen a couple of reports yesterday suggesting that he's agreed on this deal because it's the most beneficial deal for the football club itself rather than him. What do we know with regards to what Moshiri's getting out of it, if anything?
I think it is. It's more beneficial for the club than it is for him. My understanding, John Textor was willing to offer him more to get out, but he understands, I think, that there's no guarantee with any of that. So John Textor, yes, he has a 45% shareholding in Crystal Palace, but he only has about 25% of the voting rights there. He has to divest his interest in Crystal Palace before he could do anything. And I don't, from what people in the US told me, David Blitzer and Josh Harris, who were also part of that consortia that owned Palace, didn't have too much appetite to increase their shareholding by purchasing Textors. So that could have rumbled on for a number of months, and Textor has to go through the same process. Then you're into early part of next year, and by such time, Moshiri's probably going to have to try to find additional funding for working capital payments or the next tranche of funding for the stadium, etc. And then you start to get into the issues that you had with 777, whereby people who are looking to acquire the club but not yet acquired the club are piling on more and more debt. So I think this is now. I'm really not one for giving Farhad Moshiri much credit for what has happened at Everton. I think, and when all is said and done, he will be viewed as one of the poorest owners that the Premier League has ever seen. His saving grace is the stadium, because that is ultimately what will help Everton turn themselves around and compete to a greater level than some of those around them in the future. So that is one thing which is a lasting legacy. But everything else that has happened has been so destructive to the trust of the fan base. It's just been the worst 2 or 3 years for the football club. However, I think he sees this as this is the best opportunity to make a good decision on behalf of the football club, but also it's not without the fact he realises he would have to go back and potentially find some more funding early part of next year if the Textor deal dragged on. And if that deal didn't happen, then he's got to go back to market again for someone who would be comfortable with that 777 debt that exists. So I think it works on both sides, but I do think there's an element of he's probably accepted a lesser deal than he could have got. I'd like to think that it's in the best interest of the football club. Factored into that thinking, but he would also realise that he doesn't want to spend any more money.
Yeah, okay. Just some general, I suppose, opinion questions, just based on your observations of the Friedkin Group. What type of owners are you expecting them to be? Looking at what they've done with Roma.
I think they will. I think we'll see. We've been so used to chaos at Everton that I think they will be certainly come in and try and be the opposite of that. I think they'll try and make a point of speaking when they need to speak and putting the right people in place to deliver operationally. Stability is what Everton needs, and that's what they'll be targeting initially. I mean, they don't need to come in and make grand plans about we want to be challenging for the Champions League in 4 or 5 years. Yes, everyone would love that, and it plays well for a while, but you have to be sensible about these things. Everton have been through a lot, and it's going to take a lot to recover to make the club competitive again, to allow them to spend, to be very competitive. So I think they'll be responsible owners. I think they'll be pragmatic, but I think they'll be focusing on what they can do to alleviate the pressures that have been put on the club over the past 2 or 3 years. I don't think they'll go into the market and just start trying to throw money around as and where they can. I think that they'll look at what's happened. And I think there's an appetite from supporters to just I always think of that kind of Phoenix Night line with Brian Potter's, like saying, "Could we close the circus and open the club?" I think it's I think there's an element of that. Fans just want to stop being the butt of the joke and not have to worry about who the owners are, not have to think about the owners. They shouldn't, they should have to think about, oh yeah, we're owned by so and so once every blue moon. It shouldn't be a running theme. The running theme should be what happens on the pitch, and that's become kind of a secondary for so long. I mean, last season, it was the same. So I think they'll try and lean into that, knowing that there is probably some give on the supporter side, who don't expect them to come in and just, like Moshiri did when he came in. Everyone was so excited because there was money being spent, and everything was exciting. There was Carlo Ancelotti coming in, there was James Rodriguez, but ultimately, I think Evertonians just want someone to come in and say, look, steady the ship, don't give us any flannel, just deliver over time, make us better incrementally, and get us back to where we want to be over time. I don't think anyone's coming in with grand plans of changing things quickly, and I think they'll lean into that.
I mean, is there any concerns or red flags that you've seen with regards to the Friedkin Group? I mean, I guess in modern day football, no owner is perfect.
No, and it would be remiss not to mention the fact that there are serious protests against them in Rome, because fans are deeply upset that they sacked Daniele De Rossi as head coach. I mean, he's a Roma legend, and they only gave him a contract extension 2 or 3 months ago. Had a poor start to the season, after 3 or 4 games, and he's gone, and that's really not played out well. The CEO, Lina Suluku, she left on the day of game last week, so they're searching for a new CEO. But Rome, Italian football fandom is pretty can be pretty spicy, and it can be quite militant at times. And I think that element of it manifests itself quite viscerally, I think, and it's easy to see it. So I think they won 3-0 the weekend, and I think there were still whistles and jeers at the end of the game. But they were popular at the start of their tenure. I mean, they won the Conference League, they reached the final of the Europa League, but I think that probably masked some elements of them failing in Serie A, not qualifying for the Champions League, because they're a big side, Roma. They're one of Europe's biggest, big guns really over time. They have had some issues in the past around. I think they were fined by UEFA for around financial regulations, but that largely related to kind of there was some kind of carry on from previous ownership, because they acquired the club in 2020. So there's no major, they're not huge spenders frivolously, but I think they've probably learned a few harsh lessons over the past couple of years, certainly the past recent weeks, about what it's like to get on the wrong side of fans, and maybe it's a lesson that they'll be wise to learn and take heed of heading into ownership of a new club. Now, I don't think them acquiring Everton is going to play particularly well in Rome. In Italy, it's hard to get things done, so they want a new stadium built. They're still seeking to kind of find a site for that, to get that going. But to get through Italian bureaucracy, easy for me to say, is challenging. AC Milan and Red Bull Capital have been trying to get that off the ground ever since they arrived a couple of years back. That's still a battle. Previous Rome owner Jim Pilato tried to get a stadium built. That had never happened. So Italy is a different beast in England, but I still think they'll learn some harsh lessons. But also, they were popular owners until fairly recently. So I think that if they can learn lessons from that and understand the nuances of English football fandom and what fans expect, then I think they'll be okay.
I've had a lot of questions with regards to what is now Everton, probably under a multi-club model with obviously Roma. Where do Everton fit into that in terms of the hierarchy? Is I'm right in saying that Friedkin only owns Roma, and now obviously it's going to be Everton, so it's only the two. So it's not like he's got like a multitude of clubs like Manchester City's owners, where they obviously sit at the very top of that. But where do you think Everton would sit with regards to priority? Because I'm sure Everton fans want priority over Roma, and I'm sure Roma want priority over Everton, and I'm sure there's Roma fans even questioning why Friedkin is even buying Everton.
I think that the statement they put out to Roma fans kind of mentioned multi-club models and kind of some of the synergies that clubs can benefit from. But from what I'm told, they haven't gone into this to try and build some kind of sprawling multi-club portfolio. This was an opportunity which arose. Now, the stadium is so key to everything. I mean, American owners, whether it be North American sport or coming over here into football, arenas and where teams play are what it gives them the ability to generate the cash, whether it's on a match day and throughout weeks, and that can be a game changer for revenue generation, also the valuation of clubs. Now, they've struggled to get a stadium built in Rome, but they just acquired a club or going to acquire a club which has a stadium which is ready for the start of next season, which is bespoke, which has a great location, great links in a kind of world-renowned city. I think they see it as a huge opportunity. I don't think they would have normally. You look at teams like Roma and Everton. Those are two teams that you would think would be kind of competing assets. I mean, you could very much imagine seeing those teams in Europe competing in European competition regularly. It's not like Man City, where they don't expect to play. They didn't expect Girona to be good, qualified for the Champions League. They did, they've got Troyes and Lommel. They acquire teams which they don't expect to have that problem. So I think this is a play because it's an opportunity. I mean, it's opportunistic. So stadiums there, the 777 deal fell apart. There's an opportunity there to acquire a club from a seller that needs to go. That might be where there's a deal willing to be done, and for less than maybe the market value. So I think that's what it is. Yes, the protestations they've made have kind of been about being at Rome for the long term. I think a lot of that depends on whether they can get a stadium built in Rome and their appetite for that. But I think Everton really represents, certainly in terms of growth as well. I mean, the Premier League valuations of clubs are far higher than they are in Italy. Media deals are 3x what they are in Serie A in the Premier League, and the global appeal is greater. So it's it's to be involved in the Premier League is where it's most financially viable, and that's why there's more than half of Premier League teams either have majority ownership or minority stakes held by American owners. So I don't think there'll be a case of Everton being the junior of the two. I think it will be a lot of to and fro in Rome to try and get this stadium done, but Everton and trying to return that stability and ensure they're part of a lucrative Premier League moving forward and maximising the potential of the stadium. I think that will be a huge focus, but they'll be very mindful of not making a bad impression on Evertonians by not being engaged or spending what's perceived to be too much time in Everton. I think they'll spread themselves accordingly and hire the right people to do the job for them.
I found it interesting. It's not really a question, but it's just an observation from me that they used the word custodian in one of the statements yesterday, which I think was a nice touch really from them. But just to finish off then, Dave, just to find a couple of questions just on the football side. What do you think this means for Sean Dyche, and do you expect them to a complete overhaul of Everton's football operations? Maybe not now, but certainly within the summer.
Hard to tell. I thought it was some of the things which came out from John Textor during the process about his football vision. I thought that was probably in poor taste for someone that's not acquired a club and someone that's still in situ in a job. I think they'll come in and assess. It's difficult to. I know it's been a very tough start for Everton, but it's difficult to assess from the outside looking in. They'll already have some ideas, I'm sure. And usually people get the benefit of the doubt when they come into somewhere, but they're always chasing their tail a little bit because owners will come in with their own ideas. But it's been a strange working environment for Sean Dyche and Kevin Thelwell and the coaching team, because they've been working with both arms tied behind their back and their ankles shackled and mouth gagged for a long time. So I think that they'll probably be given some chance to prove their worth. But I imagine that the Friedkin Group will probably have an idea of how a football structure they want should look, and whether or not who the pieces of the puzzle are that lead that, I don't know. But I imagine that people will get the chance to at least prove their worth or kind of want to be part of the project moving forward. But that's pure guesswork at this moment in time.
Okay, Dave. Well, we'll finish off. Any final remarks before we do? You suggested there that you would expect this deal now to be completed before Christmas, which is that's still 3 months away. But positive stuff, isn't it?
It is. Before Christmas, I think it could be end of November, early December. It is positive. Evertonians need a break. The club needs a clean break. They need to draw a big line under what's gone on. And I think it'd be great to never have to mention 777 and everything again, and just kind of move into a new stadium. Key to it all is new stadium and being a Premier League team again next season. The quicker this happens, the better the chance Everton have, I think, because also the whole place will get a lift. So while I think the squad is good enough to remain a Premier League side into next season. It just needs a lift. Places just need something which gives everyone a lift, puts a spring in people's step, and that in turn can be a catalyst for change. And that's what they need. And then once that happens, then we can look towards the future and how to effectively plan a summer transfer window without chaos going on behind the scenes. I'd just be nice for fans just to focus on what goes on the pitch and not have to, be in a battle with ownership or the Premier League, and just enjoy going to the game in a new space from next season and having some element of hope rather than despair. So that's the hope, and touch wood. I hope that is delivered before Christmas, and we can start to have some more positive discussions about what goes on behind the scenes at Everton.
Yeah, definitely. Fantastic stuff, Dave. Thank you for coming on the show and giving us your time today. That is all for today's show. Please remember to hit the like button and give us a thumbs up, and also subscribe to the Royal Blue YouTube channel. I've been Ian Croll, joined by Dave Powell, Reach PLC's Business of Football writer, and this has been the Royal Blue Podcast.
You've been listening to the Royal Blue Podcast from the Liverpool Echo.